I did try and pair up people with people that I thought would work well together. You guys are sort of a mismatch in the way that your partner didn't respond. So if we just take a minute now to tell us about your project. So we'll start with you Abdul. You just tell us about where you went to uni and what your final year project was.
Okay, so I went to uni at Middlesex University. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Product Design, and my final year project was about finding out the reasons why there's such a low cycling percentage within ethnic minorities within London, and how I could improve that. And the method I chose was to use co-design, because a lot of the stuff, a lot of the research I saw was based off of like assumptions, and they weren't. They were sort of group thoughts of different communities around London and England. Even though I realized there'll be a lot more nuance in people's responses as to why they didn't cycle. So I used co-design, where that allowed me to interact with people, and they had a say in the design process. It wasn't just me producing something and then giving it to them. They actually had input into the features and stuff of the design, and that also allowed me just to find out more insights. I worked quite closely with the community. It wasn't just one session. It was a lot of work just to get the co-design workshop. So I learned loads of insights just from talking to people. And then my sponsor project was a cycling solution that helped parents and children cycle together in a more intimate way.
Hmm.
That's my project.
Yeah, it's good to see a lot of students like yourself. It's nice to see them work with communities. I mean, did you work with a community near your university, or was it where you're at home? Because I know a lot of people tend to focus on where their uni is. Or was yours just looking to do it on a, nationwide scale?
Um, I'd like to do it on a nationwide scale, but I did it more local to where I live. It was with a church community, not too far with where I live now, because I know one of the people that attend the church. Um, they're like one of the leaders within the church, so it was quite easy for me to sort of talk to different people.
That's good. Marine, tell us about your project as well then.
So my project is not a final year project, but I've done a short documentary about anxiety and try to understand what it is, what are the boundaries between the healthy anxiety and the disorder. So it was a documentary about people, to give them a voice to express themselves on something that we usually don't really talk about in our society. I feel like it's still very not well understood, not even in the medical field, which like has a tendency to be like put aside, even though it can be very debilitating in the daily life. So it was like a very intimate conversation on 101 with people, and really like give their experience and their thought about it. And I really tried to like interviewed people from different background, different culture, different gender, and really have their sense of what it is. And it was very interesting to see that people had a very like personal experience with it, even though they pretended that they weren't really feeling anxious at all. But then they discovered that, oh yeah, that's maybe something I can feel as well. And yeah, so it was really interesting, and the purpose of it obviously was like to raise awareness about it. And I feel like I touched some people already, people who watched it anyway, were feeling like empathy towards the people who were talking about it.
Mm. Yeah, no, I did watch it and I really enjoyed it because yeah, it's definitely something that is misunderstood. Anxiety is a bit more of a brush away term that you might give to someone. I mean, because there are feelings of just being anxious, you know, before like an exam or something like that. We've all been there, but then there's levels to it in the way that, you know, it can be crippling on your life. You know, it stops people. I mean, personally, I haven't experienced it too much in my life, but I know people that have, and yeah, it's crippling. It takes over your whole life, and it stops you from achieving everything you should do.
Yeah. It is very interesting. I'm slowly like getting in that direction as well for next year, and about mental health and how it is treated as well, because in the documentary we're talking a little bit about medication and how it is a plaster only, basically, because it treats the symptoms, the physical symptoms of the anxiety, but it doesn't treat at all the underlying cause, and the physical symptoms are only a consequence of the underlying cause. So it is very interesting how it is treated, and I think it's all related on how it's perceived as well. Like a few years ago, it was still considered as like a weakness, and even today, we don't really know where the boundary is, because anxiety is a really, really natural feeling, and that's something that we should have actually, because this is our survival instinct. But today, because we don't really need it, we're adapted to our daily life, and that can very quickly become like a burden. So yeah.
Mental health's kind of the thing that you need to remind, like you never really solve your issues. It's kind of something that you work with and work out over time. And I think that's like you were saying, medication. You know, you can't just be given medication and being like, done, tick. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like society's kind of like that. Oh, we've seen this person about it, and that's good, and that's done. Abdul, did you take into account any sort of mental health with your project? Because yours was looking at a community that aren't cycling, that aren't using that as sort of an output, because whether it's exercise, transport, it's quite a positive thing, and it can have a positive impact on your mental health. Is that something you thought about?
Only slightly. When that was because I think first I saw the health benefits in terms of obesity and stuff, because ethnic minorities in England normally are more overweight than the rest of the population. So I saw that they're an opportunity to help them in that sense. But when I started talking to people, I saw that there was an anxiety around cycling in general, because people didn't feel safe on the roads, and yeah, that was one of the major barriers of cycling. I think most people suffer from that, not just ethnic minorities. People just don't want to cycle because they're afraid, and that sort of goes to what Marine was saying about anxiety sort of being a good thing, because it's a survival mechanism, and but sometimes that survival mechanism like, holds you back from doing certain things. So like I think that mental health aspect was a barrier to some people, but I also see the good that comes out of cycling, because the people that did cycle were really enjoyed it, and it felt they they're sort of empowered by it. If you talk to a lot of cyclists, it brings up good memories. Even the adults that don't cycle as much now, they have good memories of when they cycled when they were younger. So there's a clear like relation between like exercise in general and improving people's moods. But I don't think it's too clear in people's mind that they can use exercise to help them with help them feel better. They just see exercise as
healthy
being
body.
healthy.
That's like,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
has it been something you thought about a bit more now that I know since lockdown the government did like a voucher for like getting your bike repaired and fixed, and also I know friends that tried to buy bikes. Apparently they're like sold out like everywhere because like it's something to do, and you hear the like adverts on the radio and stuff like they're encouraging you to use other means rather than public transport. Is that
Mhm.
something you noticed and sort of factored into your project, or has life just been a bit crazy and you haven't really thought about it?
I haven't really thought about it that much because my co-design workshop sort of was finished 2 weeks before lockdown happened, so I haven't had that much communication with the group, because I used to go to the actual church so I could speak to people, but that sort of moved to a Zoom meeting, so you can't have the same amount of time with different people just to talk about what they've been doing. But I don't think I've seen a lot more people, especially from ethnic minorities, cycling that much more. Like, you'd expect there to be a bigger boom, especially as buses, you can't fit as many people inside, and there's all these restrictions. But cycling, there's been a slight increase, but not as much as the government probably wants, and as much as you'd expect.
Do you think it's because of the lack of like access to information or awareness to the information? Because the government are doing these things, but like minority groups are notoriously not in tune with government and what they're saying all the time. Do you think that's a problem? And it probably applies to anxiety as well. People that are anxious aren't always, you're worried about other stuff and you're kind of within yourself. So we'll start with Abdul first. Like, do you think that's a problem that these people aren't seeing this help and there's not enough effort to bring it to them?
Yeah, I think they may know about what the government wants, but then sometimes there's like a gap between what the government wants in reality. So the government can say that they want all this stuff to happen, but you need to still tackle the feelings of the person. That's why I think working with communities is so important, because it's different from just telling someone you should do this, but like when you get to understand the decision making, you can sort of encourage them to do stuff. You need to work more closely with people to affect change in a real way, instead of just having a broad statement like this is what's going to happen.
Do you feel that with your project too, Marine?
Yeah, I mean,
No, sorry, I was asking Marine if
So,
she thought the same thing about sort of anxiety and mental health.
yeah, I feel like this is already something that embarrass people, kind of, because as I said earlier, it's seen as like a weakness, especially in professionally. It's not something that is recognized yet, or at least not a lot. But I actually think that the government should do something about it, because it costs them so much money. Economically, it's a burden. It's like, I think it's in billions a year, and millions of days of paid sick days. But I also think that I don't think it would have like a massive impact either. I think the work should be done between each other, like socially, or like in communities, because you feel like more keen to talk about it, or to raise awareness about it when it's like more intimate. I feel like campaigns and stuff like that wouldn't work, because I mean, to me anyway, it feels very like commercialized. It's almost like,
well, it was kind of that's what is sort of commercial businesses and news outlets do. Every sort of issue has its day, right? So like mental health sort of almost like jumped on the scene like probably like 2 years ago, maybe, as like a big like, oh my God, mental health. And then all the news outlets were like, oh my God. And then like all the businesses were like, yeah, mental health, mental health, mental health. And then it's the next thing. And that was kind of my fear with like Black Lives Matter as well. It becomes about commercial enterprise, and like everything just has its day in the newspaper, whereas all these things take years of change. And I think mental health, I think I did notice that. I kind of, because we did a whole mental health awareness week thing like last year, and I did say in one of the podcast things we did then, I said it'll be interesting to see if it's still, or it's just had its day, because businesses all chime in. You see, almost every business now is going along Black Lives Matter sort of rhetoric in their advertising stuff, which is great. but like, will that continue, or is it going to be another thing? And it's kind of happened with the environment as well, and and refugees as well. We've just seen refugees in the news again, whereas they dominated the news around Brexit. And then, those refugees didn't just go away, did they? They didn't it wasn't like we did Brexit, that's like tick, whatever, like that. And I feel like there's so many things. And that's why I like your project, because it was like, okay, it's good, people need to still be talking about
it.
Yeah,
I think that bottom-up approach really helps. Go on, Brian.
No, keep going. All good.
I was saying the bottom-up approach really helps keep it within communities, because if you're just focusing on news outlets and big corporations to make the change, I don't think a lot of change will happen, because there's a disconnect between those. Like you can see there's a distrust between news outlets and distrust between the big corporations. So I think it needs to start at a lower scale. That's where you can make the most change on the ground, instead of just looking for billions being poured into communities, but nothing really happening because no one knows what to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's why Black Lives Matter is a bit more of a positive movement in that respect, because it has been very bottom up, and people aren't stopping, which is the main thing. But I think the mental health thing, I don't know. I just feel like a few years ago people were really supportive, and I just feel like it's been forgotten again, kind of.
Yeah. But I feel like it would come back though.
Yeah.
Like all these things like anxiety or mental health issues, there's always a rise depending on what's happening in the world as well. I know that during like the World Trade Center in America, there is like a huge rise of prescription and medication for like depression and anxiety. And because of everything that is happening in the world right now, it's like we're immersed with the media throwing like stuff at us like constantly, like 24 hours, and there's like so much. I feel very like overwhelmed by everything that's happening, the pandemic, Black Lives Matter. There's just so much things that I would not be surprised if there's like a surge of anxiety or something, and people are also like slowly realizing that we can't trust like everyone, like even the medical in the medical field, it's just like humans as well. And I used to have a tendency to think like, oh, because they're professional, they know exactly what they do, and this is the right answer. Maybe sometimes it's not. And a few years ago, there was like this thing about introspection, and I feel like it keeps going. It maybe has lost like its trend, but I'm pretty sure it will come back at some point. Even in the book, books, always like informations, and now because I'm reading a lot about it, even in the library or in the bookshop, it's crazy the amount of books that talks about this. So I don't know, maybe it's just maybe I'm wrong, it's just my instincts.
No, I think you're right. Like broadly, I think every time one of these movements or situations happen, we take a step forward. Maybe not as much as we hope to, but like generally society changes, and as generations go on, generally these issues or stigmas become reduced and sort of a bit better. I was just thinking when you're saying that, like that's definitely true. Like mental health during lockdown. Think of people that are like kind of like extroverted, like get their power from people. People like that are going to be losing their minds. Just general fear of dying, like health concerns, like anxiety and other mental health issues are going to go through the roof. I mean, I was also thinking, Abdul, did you actually graduate? Like, did you have a ceremony and stuff? Because that's been
no. Yeah, we just I just got like an email saying like congratulations for getting a final grade. So there wasn't a graduation, but I think even with how you're talking about like extroverts, even not being in a room full of other creatives, or being on campus, or being in the library, I think that that had an impact on me, on how I work, because I was someone that thrived working on campus, whereas some people loved working at home alone and they could get a bunch of work done. But I just in I like being in a different environment where you sort of bounce ideas off of other people, and you're sort of motivated by others around you, and you can see stuff happening in real time. But when you're on like Skype and stuff, you see people for an hour a day or two, and that's the only interaction you get with your peers, sort of. And the rest of the time, you might see them on Instagram, but Instagram doesn't show the real story. Yeah, so you lose a lot of that intimacy. I mean, was that the same for you, Marion? Marine, sorry.
It was dramatic for me because I'm the same. I'm like working with like people, even though I'm not communicating with them, I'm in the same room as them, and it really feels like you belong to the place, and having this interaction in like 2D like this, it was just awful, and it really gave me anxiety. Like really here, it was I was losing this human aspect of it, this intimacy, and it felt very like robotic, and you couldn't feel like you were free to say anything. You like had to really feel that time and make sure that you say everything you want to say, because you don't have a lot of time. Like for me, it wasn't even an hour, it was like 20 minutes tutorials and stuff, and it was quite rare because everyone, I think, was also very overwhelmed by the situation. No one was really prepared for that. So everyone was coping in their own way, but you still have to like, keep going. Luckily, I was not in my final year. But now I'm afraid that there will be a second wave and that it might be worse. And I feel like it will affect my work at the beginning. You know, I'm probably going to choose a direction where I won't be stuck at some point if it happens again. You know?
Yeah, it's you guys. What you're saying here is what. So I've done this with I think 8 or maybe 10 other people, and every single person has pretty much said exactly what you guys have said. Like the little nuanced conversations of like, it's not like a big conversation about your work. It's just seeing what someone else is doing, and then they make a little comment about your work, and you know, and then you have an idea because they said that little thing, and like it's all very natural and like just spontaneous, and it has such a positive impact. And also just having like, it's not all work, you know, having a little laugh and a joke with each other, you know, in between, getting lunch together, things like that, having a break together. Pretty much everyone has said that's been the worst part of that. And yeah, I hope as you go back to university, things can get back to normal as soon as possible. Because yeah, I mean, Abdul, did you have to make a lot of changes to your project towards the end, like on how you did things?
Not too much, because I sort of knew my project was going to be more digital based, because the bulk of it was developing the co-design workshop, so I didn't have enough time to create a physical piece. But it sort of impacted the feedback loop, where I sort of lost contact with a lot of the participants of the co-design workshop, so I wasn't able to get the feedback I wanted to.
And Marine, yeah, like you were saying, I hadn't actually thought, because it's been mostly final year students, so it's been like, how's your project been affected? But yours is kind of like, how's it gonna, your final year gonna start off? Like, would you move to London and try and make it work? Or
You mean if I had to start the master this year, or
no, like, so okay, so going back for your second year, sorry, like to have it such a big impact in like the middle of your work, like, are you going to go back to London? Like, because that's like quite scary to know, to move countries and to like move around. You could end up stuck and stuff like that.
I mean, For me, I would have like definitely stayed in London and tried to push it as hard as possible. But I can definitely understand how like you can really lose motivation and and shift your project. It's just, especially here, because you have to like social distance and everything is closed and everything. I feel like your project will lose its impact because it sits in the world or like within a community, and there it was like lacking of this because you just couldn't. So your project suddenly feels more like your thing in your bubble, but no one really cares about it. So that's probably the thing that is, to me, like how can I say that, like very frustrating in that sense. And also like for graduates, like trying to find a job after when everything is trying to survive, it's really not the best start.
No, actually that's something I haven't spoken to a lot of people about, because I think people are kind of a little bit resigned to I don't know, riding it out at the minute, you know, just getting by. Like, I know a lot of people aren't thinking about jobs. I mean, I don't have like a solid job. I was supposed to go and travel Canada, and I went there in March, and I was there for 6 days, and then they all started locking down, and then the UK government was like, everyone come home. And for a minute I did think, oh, maybe I'll tough it out here, and you know, and then I just thought, but what sort of life? Like you're saying, there's no world out there, you know, like being in a new country by yourself, where you know the main thing is about meeting people and getting involved. And if that's not happening, I was like, well, I'm just gonna come back and then go back when this is all over. But who knows when that will be? So I kind of feel like I'm just sitting here sometimes, just a bit like, and I've got little jobs. I could do a little bit of like labouring and building work and stuff through people I know, but yeah, I haven't looked at the job market or anything. I don't know. It's hard to plan, isn't it? Because I know people that had jobs and then they got the offer, they took them back because the company, was surviving.
Yeah, so. And myself, I just couldn't work anymore, and now I'm trying to look at stuff, but there's absolutely nothing I can apply for, or like there's nothing. So it's a bit like dead out there, which is a bit scary. You're just wondering when it's gonna start again, because to me it would be really weird to be back to normal, because I feel like it won't be normal again, it would just be different. I just don't know exactly what's going to come out of it. It's pretty difficult. I know that for some industry, they really would like to keep going with the remote work. University are thinking about it too. I mean, I know that when I'll be back to uni, at least I'm starting like a month later, which is already like a bit debilitating from a year-long project. And until Christmas, I know they will be like half digital, half physical, and we'll have to book to get in and everything. So it won't be normal.
That's such a shame. That's such a shame. Like to have, especially when you only have, like you say, a certain amount of time. There's like time. That's something. At least I don't have that, I guess. But that's. I mean, I've heard of people. A lot of people actually not going to. Like, I've heard of people that were starting uni for their first year. I know quite a few people that just aren't going to do it because they're like, I'll just try again whenever. But I know some courses. I think I saw a thing, University of Cambridge. They were doing one of their courses, master's courses, all online. And imagine that, you do well enough to go to Cambridge. You're like, this is awesome. Like, I'm going to Cambridge, and it's like, I never actually went to Cambridge. I got the degree, but like I didn't get to go to like all the old buildings and like the cool libraries and all that stuff. Like, come on, I mean, Abdul, what have you been like since you got your graduation email?
I think most days are just like a blur. They sort of just like sort of come together into like one long day, where like some days you're productive, and then other days you're just on like Netflix and YouTube. So then you've got to try to sort of take yourself out of those moments and be disciplined in your approach to work and looking for jobs. It's especially now, it seems, well, after I've graduated, the days just seem to go by so quickly, and it's like August already, and then you see September, and those are usually the times where you'd be preparing to go back into uni. But now I don't have anything to like look towards, to plan to. But it's like on this date I'm gonna start again. I've got to look for a job, and you don't know when that's gonna be. So I think that's a difficulty. It's like when you're talking about going back to uni, I think that's gonna be tough as well, because you've been on holiday, so then you need to build back that discipline of working on your project from like set periods of time. So it's such a hard balance, because you don't know when you start and when you stop. It's not like you've got like working hours where your lecture starts from like 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, or a building closes at a certain time. You're just at home, so like that work and life sort of just melds together, and that can like add stresses as well, because you don't know if you're doing enough work or you're doing too much work. It's such a hard balance.
Was when you're at home working, you always have like, if it starts going badly, you're like, your Netflix is like, so you're like, oh, I could just take a minute. I mean, and you're so right, the days are all the same. I mean, the only way I know time is going forward is I've grown a beard. My beard, I started growing this in like April, and that's the only thing I know that time's moving forward, because otherwise I look back. I mean, it's like playing golf, which I never thought I'd played, but like I'm getting kind of into golf. But I'm trying to do like, so alongside running Dropout, I do like stand-up and sketch comedy. And I was doing like stand-up in London, and it was like going well. I was finally at a point where I was like, I'm happy, life's moving forward. And then like obviously doing live shows or any live performance is going to be like one of the last things like to come back. So instead I've been trying to I bought a green screen, and I was like, I'll kind of do a show where I can use my stand-up stuff and do it on YouTube or something. So that was something I was trying to do, and yeah, to get up and do it and set it all up, and then I've got to like do the effects and everything, like to be motivated to do that, especially when there's no like accountability. Like I'm not at uni.
Yeah.
I don't even have the friends that are like, even your friends being like, oh, what have you done today? You know what I mean? Or like, or they can see your project progress at uni. You know, if Abdul hadn't done anything in 2 weeks, one of your friends would probably be like, mate, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And then you'd be like, oh yeah, I should do something. You don't even have that. So it's hard to be self-motivated. And I have huge respect for anyone that's some people are machines, aren't they? I bet, Marine, I bet there's some people in your course that you're like, how are you still going? Or have you not really seen
it's difficult for me to say, because I couldn't even like know that. But I know that for me, I was working even more than if I was in the studio, because there was no boundaries. Like crazy, it was like 13 hours a day, and I fully embraced the digital, and I decided to make my projects for the 2 months all about digital and like machine learning and all this stuff. So. But then it's really easy to get lost in it and feeling like you're not doing enough. And because you really just have to rely on yourself, you're pushing yourself even more. You're like, I want to make the best of my time in isolation, because I don't have any facilities. I'm gonna have to work on my own and be on my own and make the best of my own. But then it gets super, super overwhelming, because you're constantly in your head, and this is where you need someone else's input, and you're like trying to have a tutorial like anytime soon. But it needs a lot of self-disciplines. But I had uni, I don't know if I would have been able to do that if I was just by myself.
Yeah, I can be quite hard on myself and notice like sometimes if it's not going right. And with what I'm doing, I'm trying to make something funny by myself. I feel like I'm a crazy person half the time. Like, half the time I'm like, is that funny? I'm like talking to myself and like, so like that's been hard for me. But like, yeah, I beat myself up sometimes when I'm like, I have those Netflix days and I'm just like really harsh to myself. And I think that's going to have a bad impact on people because you do want to make the best out of any situation. But it has been hard, and I know a lot of people are feeling kind of down now because they're like their self-worth has like declined because you might have put on some weight, you might just be being lazy. A lot of stuff's out of your hands. I know everyone started lockdown with like running a lot and like all this stuff. You don't really see that as much now. I think people now are like, especially in this heat. I mean, this. Have you guys found that hard? Like, I don't know. Just sort of. I don't know. I feel like my self-worth has gone down overall. That's a bit of a big question. How's your self-worth? But I don't know. How do you guys feel? Are you still cracking on, or are you feeling a little bit down? You feeling good? Feeling pumped?
I was feeling down during lockdown, even though I was working. And this is when I realized how dependent I am on feedbacks and how people think about your work. And because that's all I had, I was identifying. How can you say that? Identifying? Yeah.
Identifying.
Yeah, identifying yourself by the work you're making. And I felt like nothing was enough and it was not good, and I could do so much better if I had this or that, and the short deadlines and stuff. I was asking myself sometimes, what am I doing this? Like, it feels so useless, or just doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm not bringing anything, or it felt like I just had to fill the time in order to get back to normal. So my self-worth was like a bit down because of this, but luckily I wasn't in isolation by myself, because I think the consequences would have been like way worse.
Is that why you decided to go back home? Because that's why I came back from Canada. I was like, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah, of course not. I mean, I was in London during the whole lockdown.
Oh, were you? Oh, so you've gone back more recently?
Yeah, I went back to France just to see family like a week ago. But
okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I came back here, I wouldn't even have been able to work properly, because here the internet is not as good as in London or whatever. I don't have like the equipment. I really have nothing here, so it would have been a real struggle to work here. Not even possible.
So who did you live with when you were in lockdown? Were you living by yourself, or did you have were there other students?
I had no other students. I just had my partner.
Okay.
So it's like easier, at least you can talk at the end of the day. You can just like communicate, and it's like you need that dynamic, because if you're just by yourself, you can like easily go crazy, or like too far. You can't step back, or it's.
Are you back with your family, Abdul?
Yeah, I've because my uni's in London and I live in London. I just stayed at home the whole time, so
Okay.
that wasn't too bad. But then I think the difficult part was when people don't understand your what you're working towards, and so you can't have the same conversations you have with your parents that you'd have with your colleagues and stuff. So that was difficult because they didn't understand how you worked and what you were doing, because it can seem sort of weird if you just spend like the whole day drawing. They might not see it as something that's worthwhile, but like towards your course it's something important. I think that whole creative thing, because you don't really understand creative. It's not like you've got an exam at the end and then you just have to memorize a bunch of stuff. you've just got to do stuff and then hope that the what you do is good enough, or what you do meets the needs. That is a really difficult part, being in lockdown without your peers.
Doesn't that show how wrong like education is in some ways? That like someone that's being active and making stuff and doing stuff, people are like, but someone that's memorizing loads of stuff, which they're gonna forget like 2 weeks after the exam. That's the way we're like, yeah, do that. Whereas like there's not enough emphasis in education on making and like doing stuff like that, I think, overall. Because in the last one I did one of these, we were talking about like when you study like French or something at school and you get a grade and you can't actually speak French, you just memorize a load of stuff. Whereas like you're saying, you're doing drawings, you're doing stuff for a community project which actually be really good and beneficial for the world. People are like, but you learning French but not actually learning French, they're like, well done, Abdul, great work. Like, I don't know, I think education's a bit messed up like that.
Questionable.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak phenomenal English, whereas a lot of English people or like British people, we can't speak another language. We literally learn languages in school for like the sake of it, I swear. Just to say like we did it. We don't learn it. They're like, memorize this paragraph writing. And that's it. And like it's the same with so many things. And that's why like it's so much more interesting to work with students, I think, from the creative industry, because you go to the degree shows, which is why it's such a shame actually. Like you go to art galleries and stuff and it's very I don't know what the word, it's like designed, it's like curated, sorry, whereas like degree shows I think are actually way better than a lot of galleries, because it's like everyone, like it's everyone. And yeah, some projects aren't as good as others because people haven't spent the time, whatever, that's on them. But generally there's such a diversity of work, such a diversity of people, and a lot of like positive outcomes can come from it. I think they're like the best thing. I think way more people should go to degree shows, because I went to something like 40 last year and it like opened my eyes to it. Like I think they're like the best thing. And it's such a shame for you, Abdul, and hopefully, Marine, you still get yours next year. Fingers crossed, because yours is really good material. Your material futures, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to yours last year. Were you there when I talked to some of you guys?
Yeah, I was here. Yeah.
You were there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was there.
Oh, okay.
This year, like it was in it was in February or something. February.
I remember I had a long day at work, and then Miles said, "Come and meet my students," because he did this last year, and like I was just shattered, and I had to talk to loads of students, and I just forgot what I was going to say, and I was just like, but yeah, that
it was very helpful because we have like this idea of like every time there's like someone from like the industry or like a professional who comes, they really got like a really prepared thing and everything. Here it was like really real and was just like, oh yeah, we can rely, it feels like more more of a debate or discussion rather than like a presentation. We write something and then say thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I had like this, like I'd had like 2 pages written, and that was like me, like that I had prepared, but like as I've never really done anything like that, and it was kind of last minute. And as soon as I got in front of everyone, people looking at me, I was just like, I don't know. Remember, I was on the train over from my work to your uni, and it was, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to say. But yeah, that's actually nice. A lot of people have said it was it was a change. So I was like, okay, I'll take that. But yeah, hopefully you get your degree show, Abdul. That's like, I really feel for all the people, because it's a celebration as well for you finishing your work, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and also like the people, like you give out business cards, you like, and you meet those people from industry as well. So like, it's such a shame you didn't get to do that. Did you do an online one? Is that how I saw your work? Maybe.
Yeah, we put our work up on loads of different websites. So we had it because Dezeen had a virtual design degree show, so we put our work up on there and on Core 77, and Middlesex had their own sort of website, but that sort of, because I've been to the degree shows as well, for like I think I've been to a few of them at Central St. Martin's and RCA, and just being able to talk to other students, and instead of just seeing an image or seeing the final product, being able to actually speak to someone about their process, about what they thought about their project, about what they thought that could be improved. And you could also talk about like details and see, oh, how was this made? And you just find loads of interesting conversations by having someone to talk to, because it's like being in the studio where you bounce ideas off each other. It's not just you reading something. It's a creative conversation that leads to more creative thinking on your part. Like you go away feeling inspired because you found out a small detail or insight someone else found out, and you could apply it to one of your projects, or you could apply it to something that you want to do going forward. And even it's just being able to connect around shared interests. Like I think I went to RCA one time, and I just spoke to one of the students, and we found out we both liked footwear design, and then he invited me to do a project around footwear design with him. We didn't end up doing the actual project, but just being in that space was really beneficial.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Has Middlesex talked? I know this is kind of like some universities have talked about maybe doing their degree shows later, which isn't really, I think, viable in the way that a lot of those students would have left London or left wherever they were going. So have they talked about doing that at all, or have they just said online only?
I think initially they thought maybe in around September they could do a physical thing, but it's looking less and less likely because students don't have access to stuff like workshops, and we don't know when the pandemic will be over, and if there is a second wave, it's hard to plan for something in the future. So I think out of caution they'll just keep it online only.
Yeah, that's a shame. Anyway, guys, thank you for doing this today. I'll get some stuff up online soon and share some stuff on Instagram and stuff. I'm really hoping the next project. So I think you guys are going to be the last of the student thing. I think I would have done like 12 people then. And I'm really hoping to do, once lockdown's over or something, I want to kind of get people together in London and have a day where we all make an art piece together, and we kind of, I don't know, throw it in the bin because it's just about us all coming together and collaborating. That's kind of like the idea I want to do next. So I'll stay in touch with you guys, and hopefully you can take part in that, because a lot of people have London and stuff. So hopefully, I mean, I was going to say hopefully this year, but
yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys, and I'll keep in touch with you.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Yeah, you guys do. See ya.
See ya.